In the contested waters of the South China Sea, a lone pilot in an unauthorized aircraft was about to defy an entire military fleet. What started as a routine amphibious operation took a shocking turn when interceptors came face to face with a ghost who refused to stay dead. Captain Rhiannon Shaw wasn't your typical rogue operator. For 12 years, she had spent her life in exile, tracking the shadowy mercenary network that had destroyed her squadron, known for tactical precision that bordered on supernatural. When she entered restricted airspace, over 200 Marines preparing for landing, she had no idea the military would rather shoot her down than listen. Shaw locked her targeting systems on civilian fishing trawlers that would lead to the exposure of a meticulously planned ambush. What began as unauthorized intrusion would become a battle between protocol and survival. The South China Sea would never be the same after a dead woman proved that sometimes breaking every rule is the only way to keep a promise. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you subscribe because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. They say ghosts belong in the past, buried beneath layers of classified paperwork and convenient lies. But the South China Sea doesn't care about official records. The water below me churned gray-green under an overcast sky, indifferent to the fleet cutting through its surface like surgical instruments. 12 years is a long time to be dead, long enough to learn patience, long enough to understand that some truths refuse to stay buried. I checked my instruments with hands steadier than they had any right to be. The modified transponder hummed its coded sequence, a digital heartbeat that would either save lives or end mine. Below, the amphibious assault ships moved in textbook formation. Marines packed into landing craft that looked like toys from this altitude. Somewhere among those vessels, young men and women prepared for an operation they believed was routine. They had no idea what waited beneath the fishing trawlers positioned 3 nautical miles northwest. But I did. My aircraft, a heavily modified older generation fighter I'd acquired through channels the government would rather not know about, sliced through restricted airspace with deliberate precision. Not reckless, not accidental, calculated. Every mile I penetrated deeper was measured, timed to coincide with the fleet's movement patterns. They would notice me soon. They had to notice me. That was the entire point. The radio crackled with routine chatter, voices exchanging status reports and weather updates. Professional, calm, unaware. I adjusted my heading 2 degrees starboard, angling directly toward the command vessel. Somewhere in that floating fortress, radar operators stared at screens that showed an impossible blip, an unauthorized aircraft where no aircraft should be. Come on. See me. React. The memory of my last authorized flight haunted every second of this one. 12 years ago, I'd flown these same skies with a full squadron behind me. Call signs sharp in my headset, orders clear and sanctioned. That mission had ended in fire and betrayal. My wingmen scattered across jungle canopy while I clawed my way through hostile territory with nothing but survival instinct and rage. The official story declared us all casualties. Clean, simple, tragic. They should have known better than to bury me before confirming the body. Static burst across the frequency I'd been monitoring. Actual, we have unauthorized aircraft bearing 035, Angels 12. No IFF transponder, no filed flight plan. There it was, the first domino. I kept my expression neutral, even though no one could see me. Old habits. Marine aviators learned to mask everything. Fear, doubt, triumph. The mask became the face. Even alone in a cockpit over hostile waters, I wore mine. Confirm identification procedures, a voice responded. Clipped, authoritative. That would be the fleet commander, probably a colonel who'd built his career on protocols and punctuality. I'd encountered his type before. Men who viewed warfare as a series of checklists, who believed the chain of command could solve any crisis if properly observed. He was about to have a very bad day. The radar warning receiver chirped softly. They'd locked on to me now. Tracking solutions calculated and recalculated. Somewhere on the command vessel, officers debated responses. Intercept, identify, engage if necessary. Standard operating procedure for an intrusion into active military operations. But there was nothing standard about me. I caught the glint of sunlight on metal before my systems registered them. 2 FA-18 Super Hornets climbing fast from the carrier deck. Beautiful aircraft. Deadly. Piloted by Marines who believed in their mission with the same fervent certainty I'd once possessed. Before the lies. Before the ambush that erased my squadron from existence. Before I learned that sometimes the enemy wears your own uniform. The lead Hornet positioned for intercept, closing distance with textbook precision. I could almost see the pilot's thought process. Confusion mixed with professional detachment. Who was crazy enough to fly into an active military zone? Drug runner? Foreign reconnaissance? Lost civilian who'd wandered catastrophically off course? None of the above, Lieutenant. I'm something your briefings never mentioned. I'm the mistake your superiors spent 12 years pretending didn't happen. I maintained heading, making no aggressive moves, but refusing to deviate. The Hornets flanked me now, near enough that I could make out the pilot markings on the lead aircraft. Young, probably mid-20s, the kind of age where you still believed orders came from wisdom rather than politics. Unidentified aircraft, this is United States Marine Corps Interceptor. You have entered restricted military airspace. Acknowledge immediately and follow my instructions. The voice was female, steady, but with an edge of tension. Good. That meant she was thinking, not just reacting. I needed her to think. I triggered my radio, keeping my own voice level and clear. Request denied. Continuing present heading. Silence stretched across the channel. I could imagine the shock rippling through the command center. Civilian aircraft didn't refuse military intercepts, not unless the pilot had a death wish or knew something the fleet didn't. Say again, unidentified aircraft. You are ordered to comply immediately or face lethal response. Lethal response. The euphemism made me smile without humor. I'd faced lethal response before, survived it, learned from it. Everything about this flight was lethal response to a threat they couldn't see yet. I banked slightly, not to escape, but to demonstrate capability. The maneuver was subtle, precise, the kind that came from thousands of hours in combat zones, not civilian flight schools. Let them see. Let them wonder. Recognition would come soon enough, though they'd never believe it. The lead Hornet matched my movement, maintaining intercept position. Professional. Disciplined. But I caught the moment of hesitation, the fractional delay that meant the pilot was reassessing. Something about my flight pattern triggered recognition, some buried memory from training footage or classified briefings. Control, this is Viper 1. Target aircraft is demonstrating advanced tactical awareness. Maneuvers consistent with military training. Progress. I needed them curious, not just alarmed. Viper 1, maintain intercept. Authorization pending for forced compliance. The second Hornet maneuvered into attack position, weapon systems cycling hot. Warning shots would come next if I didn't cooperate. They'd aim close enough to terrify, precise enough to avoid damage. Standard escalation procedures. But I wasn't here to cooperate. I was here to expose a trap that would kill every Marine in those landing craft if someone didn't break protocol and force the fleet to look where they weren't looking. 3 nautical miles northwest. Fishing trawlers that moved with military precision.
holds that carried missiles instead of nets. A carefully planned ambush timed to coincide with the landing operation, designed to create maximum casualties and international chaos. The Syndicate never forgot an enemy. I'd humiliated them 12 years ago by surviving their ambush. Now they were back, and this time they'd planned better. Except they didn't know I'd spent every year of my exile tracking them, learning their patterns, waiting for the moment to repay what they'd taken from me. My wingmen, my squadron, my life. Unidentified aircraft, this is your final warning. Comply or be engaged. I keyed the radio one more time. You have 3 minutes before those fishing trawlers open fire on your landing craft. Check your threat assessment, check your satellite intel, then decide if protocol matters more than marine lives. Then I cut the transmission and dove toward the fleet, forcing them to either shoot me down or follow me into the truth. The world tilted as I pushed into the dive, G-forces pressing against my chest with familiar intensity. The Hornets followed, predictably, pilots shouting demands across military frequencies. But I'd bought myself seconds of confusion, and sometimes seconds were enough to change everything. Lieutenant Naomi Park. I'd heard her call sign through the radio chatter, Viper 1. She'd be the one wrestling with the decision now. Chase me down or trust the instinct that something felt wrong about this entire situation. I knew her type because I'd been her type once. Young, skilled, hungry to prove herself, still naive enough to believe the system worked if you followed it properly. She'd learned today that systems failed when the people running them forgot to look beyond their own assumptions. Control, this is Viper 1. Target aircraft is pursuing unauthorized aircraft. Target has made unverified threat claims regarding civilian vessels. Requesting immediate verification. Good girl. She was thinking, not just reacting. I'd needed her to acknowledge this. Doubt was a powerful thing. It made you question, made you look closer. I leveled out at 800 feet, low enough that the Hornets had to work to maintain position, high enough to keep visual on the entire tactical picture. The fleet spread below like a 3-dimensional chess game. Command vessel at center, escorts forming defensive perimeter, landing craft approaching shore in staggered waves. And there, barely visible through scattered cloud cover, the trawlers. 7 of them in a formation that looked random to untrained eyes. But I'd studied this. I'd watched the Syndicate operate in a dozen different theaters. They loved naval ambushes, loved the chaos of surface warfare where identification took precious seconds. Those trawlers carried enough firepower to cripple half the fleet before anyone could react properly. Viper 1, close and force target to land on designated coordinates. Authorization granted for warning shots if necessary. Naomi's Hornet pulled alongside me, near enough that I could see her helmet turned toward my cockpit. She was trying to identify me, trying to understand what she was looking at. A woman, middle-aged, calm, flying a modified fighter that shouldn't exist in civilian hands. Nothing about this situation matched her training scenarios. I met her gaze through the canopy and executed a specific barrel roll. Slow, controlled, textbook perfect. But not just any barrel roll. This was a recognition maneuver from classified
Training materials, something only black operations pilots learned. A signature move from a program that officially never existed. The Phantom Squadron. My squadron. The unit erased from records after our mission went catastrophically wrong. Naomi's Hornet wobbled slightly. Recognition or coincidence? Either way, I had her attention. Control, requesting information on historical aircraft tactics matching current observation. Target pilot is demonstrating maneuvers consistent with... She paused, and I could hear her weighing the words. Consistent with classified operation protocols. Viper 1, you are overthinking the situation. Execute forced compliance immediately. That is a direct order. But the damage was done. Someone in the command center would have heard that transmission. Someone would start checking databases, cross-referencing flight patterns against archived training footage. And eventually, inevitably, they'd find records that weren't supposed to exist, files buried under layers of security classification, names of pilots officially declared killed in action. My name. I pulled into another maneuver, this one more complex, a split S reversal that transitioned into an inverted approach. Advanced tactical flying that civilian pilots couldn't execute without years of combat training. Every move was a message written in the language of aerial warfare. I'm not your enemy. I'm something you thought was impossible. Jesus, Naomi breathed over the radio, probably not meaning to transmit. Control, I've got visual on the pilot, a female approximately 40 to 45 years old, demonstrating elite-level flight capabilities. This is not a standard intercept situation. Viper 1, maintain discipline. Gender and age are irrelevant. Force the aircraft down. I banked hard toward the trawlers, putting them directly in my flight path. Naomi followed, but I could sense her hesitation. She didn't want to fire warning shots near civilian ships. Good instincts. Those instincts might keep her alive when the missiles started flying. The radio erupted with cross-chatter, other pilots weighing in, command officers demanding status updates, and beneath it all, the new voice. Deeper. Colder. Authority that cut through the confusion like a blade. This is Colonel Marcus Hale, Fleet Commander. All aircraft maintain current protocols. I want that unauthorized pilot on the ground in 5 minutes, or I want her removed from my airspace permanently. No more speculation, no more delays. Execute. Colonel Hale. I'd read his service record during my preparation. Decorated officer, multiple combat tours. Brother killed when a Maverick pilot deviated from orders and got his unit ambushed. That loss had shaped Hale into a man who trusted protocol above everything else. Rules kept people alive. Discipline prevented chaos. Under different circumstances, I might have agreed with him. But circumstances had taught me that sometimes the rules were written by people who didn't understand the battlefield. Sometimes orders came from officers more concerned with careers than casualties. Colonel, this is Viper 1, respectfully requesting additional assessment time. Target pilot is exhibiting behaviors that suggest... Viper 1, you have your orders. Implement them now, or return to carrier and face disciplinary review. The threat was clear. Obey or be punished. That was Hale's world. Binary, simple, tragically insufficient for the complexity of real warfare. I felt a surge of anger, old and familiar. This was how it had happened 12 years ago. Officers demanding obedience while the real threat maneuvered unseen. My squadron had died because someone decided protocol mattered more than ground intelligence, because admitting they'd made a mistake meant admitting the chain of command could fail. Not again. Never again. I armed my targeting systems. Purely defensive, nothing that could harm the Hornets, but enough to trigger their threat warnings. Naomi's aircraft responded immediately, sensors screaming about weapons lock. Hostile action! Control! Target his activated weapon systems, engaging defensive posture. All aircraft weapons free. I repeat, weapons free. Neutralize the threat. But I wasn't targeting Naomi. I was targeting the lead trawler, painting it with my radar in a pattern that would show up on every military sensor in the area. Look here. See what I see. Question what you think you know. Control, target has locked onto civilian fishing vessel, unable to determine intent. Viper 1, break off the hostile aircraft immediately. We cannot risk engagement near civilian ships. Perfect. The very thing Hale didn't want to avoid, collateral damage, was now forcing him to hesitate. Every second of hesitation was another second for someone in the command center to check those databases, to pull up those impossible files, to realize that the pilot terrorizing their operation was someone who should have stayed dead. I broke the targeting lock and climbed sharply, forcing Naomi to follow me away from the trawlers, a temporary reprieve. But I'd made my point. Those vessels weren't random fishing boats. They were positioned too precisely. And now, at least one Marine pilot was starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the crazy woman in the unauthorized aircraft knew something worth listening to. Deep inside the command vessel, in a space lit by the glow of multiple screens and the tension of too many officers in too small a room, Chief Warrant Officer Ezra Cole stared at data that shouldn't exist. I didn't know Cole, didn't know he'd built a reputation as the fleet's most obsessive signals analyst, didn't know he'd been reprimanded twice for chasing ghost signals that senior officers dismissed as equipment malfunctions. But I'd counted on someone like him existing. Every military unit had at least one officer who couldn't let anomalies go, who needed answers more than they needed approval. Cole had been tracking my transponder since the moment I had entered radar range. Standard procedure: identify unknown aircraft, determine origin, assess threat level. But my transponder wasn't standard. It broadcast on frequencies that shouldn't exist in civilian equipment. Encrypted bursts hidden beneath normal aviation signals. A digital signature that matched nothing in current databases. So Cole had gone deeper, dug into archives that most analysts didn't know existed, cross-referenced against historical signal patterns from discontinued operations. And there, buried beneath 12 years of classified material and official denials, he found it. My ghost. "Sir, I need you to look at this." Cole's voice cut through the command center tension. Cole Hale barely glanced away from the tactical display showing Naomi's pursuit. "Chief, unless it's immediately relevant to neutralizing that aircraft, it can wait." "It's about that aircraft, sir. The transponder signal. It's encrypted using protocols from Operation Phantom Echo." That got Hale's attention. His head turned sharply, eyes narrowed. Phantom Echo was terminated over a decade ago. Equipment decommissioned, all aircraft accounted for. "Yes, sir, but the encryption pattern matches archived signals from that program, specifically from aircraft designated Phantom 4, pilot identifier Captain R. Shaw." Silence dropped over the command center like a physical weight.
"That's impossible," Hale said flatly. "Captain Shaw was KIA 12 years ago. Confirmed casualty." "The signal says otherwise, sir." I could imagine Hale's face. The rigid jaw, the refusal to accept data that contradicted official records. Men like him needed certainty. They built careers on knowing exactly what was true and what was false, what was threat and what was ally. A dead pilot broadcasting live signals destroyed that certainty. "Equipment error," Hale declared. "Someone scavenged old military gear and doesn't know what they're transmitting. Chief, focus on current tactical situation." But Cole wasn't finished. I'd counted on that too. Obsessive analysts never let go once they'd caught a scent. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Sir, it's not just the transponder. The flight patterns match training records from Phantom Squadron. I pulled the classified footage and compared them. The maneuvers are identical. Not similar, identical, down to timing variations measured in fractions of a second." "Show me." Cole pulled up split-screen video. On one side, grainy footage from a training exercise 12 years old. On the other, real-time feed from Naomi's targeting camera. The aircraft were different, the skies were different, but the patterns were unmistakable. The same pilot,
The same impossible precision. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. Hale stared at the screens, jaw working as if chewing on something bitter. I knew what he was thinking because I'd seen that expression before. This couldn't be real. The record said otherwise. The official story said otherwise. Accepting this meant accepting that someone had lied, that the chain of command he trusted implicitly had buried the truth. "Get me Admiral Cross, now." The communications officer moved fast, establishing secure channel to Fleet Command. Within seconds, a woman's voice filled the command center. Cold, precise. Everything I remembered about Admiral Evelyn Cross. "Colonel Hale, what's the situation?" "Ma'am, we have a developing anomaly. The unauthorized aircraft appears to be broadcasting signals consistent with a decommissioned black operations program, Phantom Echo." A pause. Too long. Cross knew. Of course she knew. She'd been the one to sign the paperwork declaring my squadron casualties. Clean, simple, tragic. "Colonel, Phantom Echo pilots were all confirmed KIA. This is clearly a technical error or an attempt at deception. Focus on securing your operational space." "Admiral, the signal analysis is conclusive, and the flight patterns match archived training footage. We're looking at someone with elite-level capabilities who shouldn't exist." "Then they don't exist, Colonel." Cross's voice hardened. "I don't know what game is being played here, but you have landing craft approaching hostile shore with Marines aboard. Your priority is their safety, not chasing ghosts. Neutralize that aircraft and return to mission standard." Cole stepped closer to Hale, tablet in hand. "Sir, there's more. I've been monitoring communications patterns around the fleet. There are encrypted bursts coming from those fishing trawlers, short-range transmissions using military-grade equipment. The patterns suggest coordination for—" "Chafe," Hale cut him off. "One crisis at a time." But Cole pressed on, and I silently thanked him for his stubbornness. "Sir, if she's right about those trawlers—" "She's not, Chief, because she's not Captain Shaw. Captain Shaw is dead, and dead pilots don't save anyone." But I wasn't dead. I was alive. I was watching, and I was about to prove that sometimes ghosts were the only ones who saw clearly enough to tell the truth. The trawlers were moving into position. The missiles would launch in 4 minutes. And somewhere in that command center, Cole was staring at his screens, at the data that told a story no one wanted to hear. A woman who'd been buried alive in paperwork now flew through their airspace, breaking every rule, refusing every order, screaming a warning no one would acknowledge. Until they had no choice. "Sir, if she's right about those trawlers—" "She's not, Chief, because she's not Captain Shaw. Captain Shaw is dead, and dead pilots don't save anyone." But I wasn't dead. I was alive. I was watching, and I was about to prove that sometimes ghosts were the only ones who saw clearly enough to tell the truth. The trawlers were moving into position. The missiles would launch in 4 minutes, and somewhere in that command center, Cole was staring at his screens, at the data that told a story no one wanted to hear. A woman who'd been buried alive in paperwork now flew through their airspace, breaking every rule, refusing every order, screaming a warning no one would acknowledge. Until they had no choice. 4 minutes to prove that disobedience could be the highest form of loyalty. 4 minutes to save Marines who had no idea they were being led into slaughter. 4 minutes to make them see what I saw. I rolled into attack position and prepared to make absolutely certain they couldn't look away. The countdown in my head had reached 3 minutes. 3 minutes before the syndicate commanders in those trawlers would give the order. 3 minutes before missiles streaked toward landing craft packed with Marines who trusted their officers to keep them safe. 3 minutes to break through layers of authority and protocol and make someone listen.
Viper 1, you are authorized for forced compliance. Target the aircraft's control surfaces if necessary. Disable, but do not destroy unless absolutely required. Naomi's acknowledgement came slower than military precision demanded. Copy, control. Moving into firing position. She'd been trained for this, drilled on it. Shooting down threats to fleet operations was textbook procedure. But I could hear her hesitation in her voice, see it in the fractional delay of her maneuvers. She didn't want to fire on someone who might be telling the truth. Good instincts wouldn't save her if she followed bad orders. I pulled hard toward the marine landing corridor, deliberately positioning myself between the fleet and the coastline, the most dangerous possible position, the place where any engagement would risk hitting friendly forces. Hale would have to choose now. Shoot me down and risk marine casualties, or let me continue defying his authority. Control. Target has positioned over landing approach vector. Cannot engage without risk to friendly craft.
Viper 1, force target out of the corridor. Use whatever means necessary to clear the space. But I wasn't leaving. I banked sharply, maintaining position directly above the landing craft. Below, Marines who'd probably never see combat in their entire careers prepared for what they thought was a routine amphibious exercise, training operation, show of force, the kind of mission where the biggest danger was seasickness or equipment failure. They had no idea that 7 fishing trawlers positioned in seemingly random pattern were actually a kill box designed by people who'd spent 12 years planning revenge. Viper 2, take flanking position. We're going to box her in and force her north. The second Hornet moved into position, both pilots coordinating with the precision that made Marine aviators legendary. Under different circumstances, I would have been proud. These were my people, my Marines, the ones I'd sworn to protect when I first turned my wings. That oath hadn't expired just because someone declared me dead. I keyed my radio, broadcasting on all military frequencies. Colonel Hale, those trawlers are moving into firing positions. Check your satellite imagery. Look at their spacing. That's not fishing formation, that's coordinated weapons deployment. You have 2 minutes. Unidentified aircraft, cease transmissions and comply with intercept procedures immediately. My name is Captain Rhiannon Shaw, call sign Rook, Phantom Squadron, and if you don't redirect your threat assessment in the next 90 seconds, you're going to lose half your landing force. Silence crashed across the channels. I'd said it, spoken the name that wasn't supposed to exist, claimed an identity that official records had erased. No more hints, no more subtle maneuvers, just the truth, raw and undeniable. Viper 1, did she cast? Maintain radio discipline, Hale cut in. But his voice had changed. Uncertainty crept through the authority. All units, ignore hostile commentary. This is psychological warfare intended to create confusion. Colonel, this is Chief Cole. Sir, the signal analysis confirms. Chief, stand down. I will not have my command center turned into a debate society while hostile aircraft threatens my Marines. I felt the old anger surge, the same fury that had kept me alive through 12 years of exile. Officers who refused to see, leaders who valued their own certainty over evidence, the chain of command protecting itself while the people it was supposed to protect died. Not this time. I dove toward the trawlers, afterburner igniting, acceleration pressing me back into the seat. The Hornets followed, Naomi shouting coordinates, her wingman calling out attack vectors. But I wasn't running. I was forcing them to look where they didn't want to look. Target is engaging civilian vessels, all aircraft weapons hot, prepared to... The lead trawler's deck split open. Missile pods rose from concealed hatches, targeting systems acquiring the landing craft with mechanical precision. In that frozen second, everything I'd been screaming about became visible, undeniable, real. Jesus Christ, Naomi whispered. Control, confirm visual on hostile weapons deployment. Trawlers are armed. Repeat, civilian vessels are hostile combatants. I pulled up hard, giving the Hornets clear view of what I'd known all along. 7 trawlers,
42 missile pods, enough firepower to turn the landing operation into a massacre that would dominate headlines for months, an international incident carefully designed to look like American aggression against civilian vessels. The syndicate specialized in chaos. They understood that perception mattered more than truth in modern warfare. All units, evasive protocols, Hale's voice cracked across every frequency. Landing craft, abort approach, repeat, abort approach, defensive posture. But the trawlers were already launching. Missiles streaked from their pods, contrails writing death sentences across the gray sky. The landing craft scattered, turning hard, but they were slow, vulnerable, exactly where the syndicate had wanted them. I'd spent 12 years studying these tactics, 12 years tracking the organization that had destroyed my squadron. I knew their patterns, their timing, their preferred kill sequences, which meant I knew exactly where each missile would go. I rolled into the attack pattern that Phantom Squadron had perfected in a dozen black operations the government would never acknowledge. Not the defensive flying they taught in standard training, not the careful, measured responses from official doctrine. This was the aggressive, unpredictable warfare that made ghosts effective. My weapon systems locked onto the first missile, fired. The explosive round intercepted mid-flight, detonating the warhead in a brilliant flash that lit the clouds. I was already tracking the second, third, adjusting vectors with muscle memory that never forgot. "Holy shit," someone breathed over the radio. "She's engaging the missiles directly." "Viper 1, assist." Naomi's Hornet dove alongside me, her targeting systems acquiring threats with impressive speed. She'd moved past doubt now, past protocol. She'd seen the truth and made her choice. Some choices define your entire career. This was hers. We worked in tandem, two aircraft dancing through hostile fire, intercepting warheads that would have torn through marine landing craft. The sky filled with explosions, each one a life saved, a family back home that wouldn't get the visit from uniformed officers bearing terrible news. But there were too many missiles, too many angles of attack. The syndicate had planned well. Landing craft taking fire, multiple impacts on vessel Delta 3. I banked hard, pushing my aircraft to limits that made the frame groan, acquired the missile tracking toward Delta 3, fired, missed by inches. The warhead continued its trajectory toward Marines who were probably screaming, praying, preparing to die. Naomi intercepted it. Her shot was perfect, textbook precision under pressure. The missile detonated 50 meters from Delta 3, close enough to rock the vessel, but not destroy it. "Nice shot, Lieutenant," I transmitted. "Thanks, Ghost." Her voice carried new respect, new understanding. She'd figured out what I was, who I was, and she'd made her peace with it. The trawlers continued launching, but the fleet's defensive systems had activated now. Point defense systems tracked incoming threats, electronic warfare suites jammed targeting systems. The ambush was failing. Not completely. The syndicate would still claim casualties, still create their incident, but the massacre they'd planned wouldn't happen, because I'd broken every rule to make sure someone looked where they needed to look. The South China Sea had transformed into a war zone. Surface-to-air missiles lanced upward from escort vessels, creating a defensive umbrella over the scattered landing craft. Naomi and I worked at the gaps, intercepting threats that slipped through the coverage. Her wingman joined us, 3 aircraft moving in coordination that felt almost choreographed. "Viper 3, you're drifting into crossfire zone. Adjust heading 2 degrees port." "Copy, Ghost." No questions, no hesitation. I'd earned their trust with action, not words. Colonel Hale's voice cut through the tactical chatter. "All units, priority targets are the launch vessels. Disable those trawlers before they empty their magazines." Finally, someone with authority was making the right call.
I rolled toward the nearest trawler, targeting systems painting its missile pods. But these weren't civilian fishermen who'd panic under fire. Syndicate operators were professionals. The trawler's deck bristled with concealed defensive weapons, autocannons rising from hidden mounts, creating a wall of fire that forced me to break off. "They've got point defense," I transmitted. "Standard attack runs won't work. We need to coordinate." "Ghost, who the hell are you to be giving tactical advice?"
The question came from Viper 2, voice tight with stress and residual doubt. Fair question. I was dead, officially. A ghost who'd appeared from nowhere, broken every rule, defied every order. Why should they trust me? I'm the pilot who spent 12 years tracking the people shooting at you, I answered. I'm the one who knows they always position their command vessel in the northeast sector. Take out that trawler and the others lose coordination. Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then Naomi spoke. Colonel Hale, request permission to follow Ghost's tactical assessment. She's been right about everything so far. More silence. I could imagine Hale in the command center, torn between his rigid adherence to chain of command and the undeniable fact that the dead pilot he'd tried to shoot down had just saved his Marines. Permission granted. Viper Squadron, coordinate with Ghost. Eliminate the command vessel. I felt something shift in my chest. Not quite redemption, not quite vindication, but acknowledgement. Someone with authority had finally listened. Vipers, split approach pattern. I'll draw their fire. You come in from flanks at Angel 5. Wait for my mark. I dove toward the command trawler, afterburner blazing, making myself the most obvious threat. The Syndicate operators took the bait, every defensive weapon tracking my approach. Autocannon fire filled the air, creating a storm of lead I had to thread with maneuvers that pushed my aircraft to its absolute limits. Mark! Naomi and her wingman struck from opposite angles, missiles impacting the command trawler's exposed bridge. The vessel erupted in secondary explosions as ammunition cooked off, flames consuming the sophisticated equipment the Syndicate had spent years positioning. The other trawlers immediately lost cohesion. Their firing patterns became erratic, uncoordinated. Individual vessels fighting for survival rather than executing a unified plan. Redirect to remaining targets. Hit them before they can regroup. We swept through the combat zone like avenging angels. Years of tactical training focused into minutes of devastating efficiency. The Syndicate had planned for a standard military response. Careful, measured, predictable. They hadn't planned for a ghost who knew their playbook and 3 Marine pilots willing to break formation and trust their instincts. One by one, the trawlers fell silent. Burning, disabled, the ambush broken. All landing craft report status, Hale ordered. The responses came back. Damage, casualties, but nothing like what would have happened if the ambush had succeeded completely. Dozens of lives saved because someone was willing to shout a warning loud enough to be heard over the noise of protocol. I climbed to altitude, fuel gauge warning me that I was running on borrowed time. My entire mission had been planned as one way. Get in, warn the fleet, hope they listened before shooting me down. Escape wasn't part of the equation. Ghost, this is Colonel Hale. His voice was different now, harder, more thoughtful. You're ordered to proceed to carrier deck for emergency landing. We need to debrief this situation. Translation, we need to figure out who you really are and what the hell just happened. Negative, Colonel. I don't have the fuel. And we both know Admiral Cross would rather see me in the ocean than on your deck answering uncomfortable questions. Ghost. Check your sensors, Colonel. This isn't over. Chief Cole's voice burst across the command frequency. Sir, I'm picking up new signals, underwater contacts, multiple signatures consistent with submarine deployment. Of course. The Syndicate always had layers. The trawlers were Phase 1. Create chaos, draw attention, force defensive posture. But the real killing blow would come from beneath, when everyone was focused on the surface threat. I'd seen them use this tactic before, 12 years ago, in the South China Sea, when they'd ambushed my squadron and killed everyone except the one pilot stubborn enough to refuse to die. They're running the same operation, I transmitted, my voice carrying the weight of old ghosts. 12 years ago, they hit us with surface combatants first, drew us into engagement. Then submarines launched torpedoes at the support vessels. We lost 2 ships and an entire aviation unit before we figured out their game. How do you know this, Hale demanded. Because I was there, Colonel. Because I watched my wingmen die while officers argued about protocols. Because I've spent every year since then tracking these people, learning their patterns, waiting for the chance to stop them from doing it again. Static filled the channel. Then Admiral Cross's voice cut through,
cold and sharp as January ice. Captain Shaw, if that's truly who you are, you were declared killed in action after disobeying direct orders and abandoning your squadron. Your conduct led directly to their deaths. You have no authority here, no credibility. Return to base immediately or face forcible interdiction. The accusation hit like a physical blow. I knew it was coming. Cross had built her career on the lie that I was the problem, not the solution, that I'd gone rogue and gotten my people killed. The truth was more complicated, but truth rarely survived contact with politics. Admiral, with respect, you signed the orders that put us in that kill box. You ignored intelligence reports about syndicate activity in the sector. And when we tried to extract under fire, you denied air support because it would have meant admitting you'd made a mistake. Lieutenant Park, Cross's voice turned icy. You are ordered to bring that aircraft down immediately. Lethal force authorized. Naomi's response was quiet but firm. Admiral, Ghost has been correct about every tactical assessment today. If she says there are submarines deploying, I believe her. Lieutenant, you are dangerously close to court-martial. Follow your orders or face the consequences. I could hear Naomi's breathing over the radio, the moment crystallizing. Every pilot faced it eventually. The choice between career and conscience, between the safety of obedience and the risk of doing what you knew was right. Ghost saved Marine lives today, Admiral. I'm not shooting her down for telling the truth. Silence. Then Cole's voice, urgent and vindicated. Sir, sonar confirms submarine contacts. Multiple vessels. They're moving into firing positions on the carriers. The pieces locked into place. Trawlers create chaos. Fleet responds defensively. Submarines maneuver undetected during the confusion. Classic syndicate. They'd refined it over 12 years, made it more sophisticated, but the core tactics remained the same.
Colonel Hale, I transmitted. You need anti-submarine assets on those contacts immediately. They'll launch in approximately 90 seconds. Target your carriers first, then the command vessel. Standard syndicate priority sequence. How can you possibly know their timing? Because I've been hunting them for 12 years, Colonel. Because revenge is patient and memory is long. Now stop arguing and save your ships. I heard him give the orders. Heard the fleet pivot from surface warfare to underwater threats. Heard the professionalism take over as trained personnel executed procedures they drilled 1,000 times. But I also heard the question forming. The one that would come later, in quiet rooms with classified clearances. The one that would unravel everything Admiral Cross had built. How had Captain Rhiannon Shaw survived? Why had she stayed hidden? And what really happened 12 years ago in the South China Sea that was worth burying the truth? My fuel gauge blinked red. Warning lights illuminated across my instruments. I'd pushed the aircraft beyond its limits, asked it to perform one more mission on vapors and willpower. Vipers, this is Ghost. I'm running on fumes, heading for emergency landing coordinates. Tell Colonel Hale... I paused, choosing words carefully. Tell him some promises outlive the people who made them. Semper Fi. Always faithful. The Marine motto. The creed I'd lived by, even when the Marines had abandoned me to paperwork and official lies. I turned toward the coastline, toward neutral territory where I could put down before the engines died. Behind me, the fleet engaged submarines with depth charges and torpedoes. Another battle in the ongoing war. Another day where someone had to break the rules to save lives. Some missions never end. Some ghosts never rest. Mine had only just begun. My aircraft shuddered as the fuel gauge dropped into critical range. The coastline stretched ahead, but distance became meaningless when you were flying on fumes and borrowed time. Behind me, the fleet engaged submarine contacts with methodical precision. Depth charges created geysers of white water. Torpedoes streaked through depths the syndicate had thought were safe. They'd underestimated the U.S. Navy's response time. More importantly, they'd underestimated what one Ghost pilot could accomplish when she refused to stay buried. Ghost, this is Colonel Hale. You need to return to the carrier immediately. Admiral Cross has ordered your detention for debriefing. Detention. The military euphemism for arrest. I'd expected this. The moment I'd revealed myself, The moment I'd proven I wasn't a convenient casualty, I'd become a problem that needed containment. Dead pilots were easy. They stayed in their graves and didn't contradict official narratives. Live ones asked uncomfortable questions. "Negative, Colonel. I don't have the fuel for carrier approach. I'm heading for emergency landing zone." "Ghost, that's an order. Divert now or face interdiction." Admiral Cross's voice cut across the channel before I could respond. "Colonel Hale, I am issuing direct orders. That aircraft is to be brought in immediately. Use whatever force necessary. The pilot is not to leave your operational space. This is a matter of national security." National security. The phrase that justified every cover-up, every buried truth, every inconvenient witness who disappeared into black sites or unmarked graves. I'd heard it before, 12 years ago, when Cross had looked me in the eye and told me my squadron's death was classified, that asking questions would be unpatriotic, that some truths serve no purpose except to damage morale. I'd believed her then. Young, naive, still convinced that authority equated to wisdom. "Admiral," I transmitted, letting every ounce of contempt color my voice. "National security is what you invoke when politics matter more than people. I saved Marine lives today. That's my security clearance. That's my authorization. And if you want to arrest me for it, you'll have to shoot me out of the sky first." "Lieutenant Park, you have your orders. Engage that aircraft." The silence stretched. I could imagine Naomi in her cockpit, hands on controls, torn between everything she'd been trained to believe and everything she'd witnessed today. The chain of command was absolute. Disobeying an admiral was career suicide, but following orders blindly had nearly gotten Marines killed. "Admiral Cross," Naomi said slowly, carefully. "With respect, ma'am, Ghost has demonstrated superior tactical awareness throughout this engagement. She identified threats our sensors missed. She prevented casualties our protocols would have allowed. If she says she can't make carrier approach, I believe her. Lieutenant, your belief is not relevant. Your obedience is. Execute the order." "Then court-martial me, ma'am. I'm not shooting down someone who saved my Marines." I felt something tight in my chest loosen. Pride, maybe. Or recognition. Naomi was making the same choice I'd made 12 years ago. Loyalty to lives over loyalty to power. The difference was, she had witnesses. Her defiance would be recorded, documented, impossible to bury. "Colonel Hale," Cross's voice turned to ice. "You have 2 subordinates refusing direct orders. This is a breakdown of discipline that threatens operational integrity. I am ordering you to personally ensure that aircraft is brought down. Use your command authority. Demonstrate that the chain of command remains functional." Hale's response took longer than military precision allowed. I could imagine him in the command center, surrounded by screens showing the battle's aftermath, damaged landing craft, burning trawlers, submarine contacts neutralized. All because one dead pilot had refused to stay buried, and one junior officer had trusted her instinct over authority. "Admiral," Hale said finally, "I respectfully request clarification. Are you ordering me to shoot down a pilot who just saved approximately 200 Marine lives?" "I'm ordering you to maintain discipline and secure a potential intelligence threat." The threat, Admiral, was the Syndicate ambush, which Ghost identified and helped neutralize. Her tactical assessment was correct at every stage. If she were enemy intelligence, those submarines would have succeeded. Instead, my fleet is intact and my Marines are alive. Colonel, your career is on very thin ice right now. I suggest you carefully consider your next words. The threat was explicit. Obey or be destroyed. That was how the system worked when you reached the levels where politics infected command decisions. Officers like Cross spent years building networks, cultivating allies, protecting their narratives. One inconvenient ghost couldn't be allowed to unravel all that careful construction. But Hale had seen his Marines nearly die, had watched the landing craft scatter under missile fire, had listened to the screams over tactical channels as warheads detonated close enough to rock vessels and terrify young troops.
Admiral, my next words are these. Ghost is cleared to proceed to emergency landing coordinates. If you want her detained, you'll need to send someone else to do it. My pilots have been through enough today." Static. Then Cross's voice, venomous with controlled fury. "You've just ended your career, Colonel. All of you. Park, Hale, every officer who defied direct orders today. I will personally ensure that your service records reflect the severity of your insubordination." "Noted, Admiral," Hale responded. "Was there anything else? I have casualties to process and damage assessments to complete." The channel went dead. Cross had withdrawn, but not retreated. She'd regroup, call in favors, manipulate the narrative. By tomorrow, the official story would paint me as a threat, Naomi as a fool, and Hale as an officer who'd lost control of his command. But today, Marines were alive because someone had broken the rules. "Ghost," Hale transmitted on a different frequency, "you've got maybe 5 minutes of fuel. There's a small airstrip on the northern island chain, technically neutral territory. Get down safely. We'll deal with the aftermath later." "Thank you, Colonel." "Don't thank me yet. Cross isn't wrong about one thing. This isn't over. But I'd rather face a court-martial knowing I saved lives than earn a promotion standing on Marine corpses." Chief Cole's voice cut in, urgent but controlled. "Sir, I'm detecting new radar contacts, multiple aircraft inbound from the northwest, fast movers, military configuration." My blood went cold. "Colonel, those are syndicate reinforcements. They're escalating. This was never just about an ambush. They're trying to trigger a major incident." "Ghost, you're out of fuel. You can't." "I can glide for another few minutes. That's all I need." The syndicate's reinforcements appeared on radar like a swarm. 6 aircraft, possibly 8. Older generation fighters, but heavily armed and flown by pilots who'd learned their trade in proxy wars and shadow conflicts. They were coming fast, targeting the vulnerable landing craft still extracting Marines from the chaos. One more push, one more attack. If they could create enough casualties, inflict enough damage, the international incident would be unavoidable. Chinese territorial waters, American forces engaged, the perfect excuse for escalation that would benefit everyone except the people actually fighting. "All Viper aircraft, defensive formation. Protect the landing craft. Do not engage unless fired upon." Hale's orders were textbook, conservative, designed to avoid escalation. Everything a responsible commander should do when faced with potential international crisis. Everything that would get Marines killed. "Colonel," I transmitted, "defensive posture won't work. They're coming in hard and they're not planning to break off. You need offensive counter. Hit them before they reach the landing zone." "Ghost, I cannot authorize preemptive strike against unidentified aircraft. That decision has to come from higher authority." "Higher authority is Admiral Cross, who wants me arrested more than she wants Marines protected. You don't have time for the chain of command. You have maybe 90 seconds before those aircraft are in firing range." "I don't have the authority." "Then give me the authority. Temporary field commission, operational command for air defense, whatever legal fiction lets you sleep at night. But make the call, Colonel, now." The pause lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Hale's voice came back, harder than before. Decided. "All Vipers, this is Fleet Command. You are authorized to follow Ghost's tactical direction for air defense operations. Engage hostile contacts as necessary to protect landing forces. Rules of engagement are weapons-free." Naomi's response was immediate. "Copy that, sir. Viper Squadron responding to Ghost's command." I felt the weight settle onto my shoulders. Not burden, responsibility. The familiar pressure of knowing that people's lives depended on decisions made in seconds, with incomplete information and no guarantee of success. This was what I'd trained for, what I'd lived for before the betrayal 12 years ago, what I'd never stopped being, even when the military declared me dead. "All Vipers, split formation. Naomi, you're with me on the lead element. Viper 2 and 3, take high cover. 4 and 5, protect the landing craft directly. 6, you're our reserve. Ghost, you're running on fumes. You can't maneuver." "I don't need to maneuver. I need them to think I can. Follow my lead and trust your training." I nosed toward the incoming syndicate fighters, engines sputtering as the last drops of fuel burned through the system. No afterburner, no rapid acceleration, just momentum
and gravity, and 12 years of accumulated rage finding focus. The Syndicate formation spread out, assuming attack vectors designed to overwhelm point defense. Professional, coordinated. They'd done this before in a dozen different conflicts, perfected it against opponents who followed standard military doctrine. But I wasn't standard military. I was a ghost who spent 12 years learning to fight dirty, to exploit every weakness, to win by refusing to accept that losing was inevitable.
Naomi, on my mark, hard break left. Viper 2, drop to attack position and light up your targeting radar. Make them think you're about to fire. I am about to fire. Not yet. Make them react first. Force them to defensive. The Syndicate fighters closed, weapons hot, targeting solutions calculated. 500 meters, 400, 300. Mark. Naomi broke hard left, her Hornet peeling away in a maneuver that exposed me to the entire Syndicate formation. Viper 2's radar painted the lead hostile aircraft, threat indicators screaming in their cockpits. The Syndicate pilots reacted instinctively, breaking formation to engage what they perceived as the primary threat. That's when Naomi's wingman hit them from below, missiles streaking through the gap in their defensive posture. 2 Syndicate aircraft exploded in brilliant fireballs. The others scattered, formation destroyed, coordination broken. All Vipers, engage at will, hit them while they're separated. The sky erupted into a knife fight, aircraft twisting through impossible angles, missiles and cannon fire creating trails of smoke and flame. Naomi flew like she'd been born to combat, executing maneuvers I'd only seen in classified training footage. She'd moved beyond following orders to thinking like a warrior. My aircraft shuddered, engines dying completely. I was gliding now, a $40 million paperweight with wings. But I could still call targets, still coordinate, still turn individual pilots into a cohesive fighting force. Viper 3, hostile on your 6, break right and climb. Viper 5, you've got a shot on the trailing aircraft. Take it. Naomi, 2 hostiles merging to engage you. I'm marking their approach vector. The battle lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes of chaos and violence, and split-second decisions where wrong choices meant death. But we had better pilots, better aircraft, and the determination of people who'd already been pushed beyond their limits and discovered they had more to give. One by one, the Syndicate fighters fell, shot down, fleeing, recognizing that this battle was lost and survival mattered more than completing the mission. The last hostile aircraft turned tail and ran, afterburner glowing as it retreated toward international waters. Naomi moved to pursue, but I called her off. Let them go. They'll report failure. That's message enough. My aircraft dropped through 1,000 feet, gliding toward the small airstrip Hale had identified. No engine power, no maneuvering capability, just controlled descent and hope that I'd calculated the glide path correctly. Ghost, you're coming in too fast. You need power for final approach. Don't have it. This is going to be rough. The runway rushed up to meet me. I pulled back on the controls, bleeding speed, fighting to maintain the angle. The wheel gear hit hard, struts compressing with force that rattled every bolt in the airframe. I bounced once, twice, then the wheels grabbed asphalt, and I was rolling, decelerating, alive. The aircraft stopped at the end of the runway, engine silent, fuel gauge reading absolute 0. I sat in the cockpit for a long moment, hands still gripping the controls, breathing hard. 12 years of exile, 12 years of tracking the Syndicate, 12 years of waiting for the chance to prove that the mission never ended just because someone declared it classified. Today, Marines went home alive because a ghost refused to stay dead. The sun was setting over the South China Sea when Naomi's Hornet touched down on the same small airstrip. I'd climbed out of my aircraft, standing beside it like a sentry at a grave. The paint was scorched, the airframe was stressed beyond certification, but it had done what I'd needed it to do. Some machines were like the pilots who flew them, too stubborn to die when the mission required survival. Naomi approached slowly,
helmet under her arm, her expression caught between awe and uncertainty. She was young, so damn young. The same age I had been when everything had gone to hell, and I'd learned that heroism and survival weren't always the same thing. "Captain Shaw," she said, rendering a salute that I hadn't earned in 12 years. I returned it. Old habits, old honors. "Lieutenant Park, hell of a flying today." I learned from the best, even if the best is technically dead. Death is just paperwork, Lieutenant. The important question is what you do when you're still breathing. She moved closer, voice dropping. "Colonel Hale says Admiral Cross is already working the political channels. She's calling you a rogue operative, claiming you staged the syndicate attack to justify your appearance, that you're mentally unstable and dangerous." I'd expected nothing less. And what does Colonel Hale say? "He's writing a full report documenting every tactical decision you made today. Chief Cole is compiling signal intelligence proving the syndicate planned this ambush weeks ago. And I'm submitting my testimony that you saved approximately 200 Marine lives. It won't be enough. Cross has connections, resources. She'll bury the truth the same way she buried it 12 years ago." "Maybe," Naomi acknowledged. "But this time there are witnesses, lots of them. Every pilot who flew today, every Marine in those landing craft, every sailor on those ships. We all saw what happened. We know who saved us." I looked toward the horizon where the fleet was visible as a cluster of lights against the darkening water. Somewhere out there, Marines were sharing stories about the ghost pilot who appeared from nowhere and disappeared into myth, creating legends, building whispers that would spread through the Corps long after official reports were classified and buried.
"The Corps takes care of its own," Naomi continued. "Even the ones they think are dead. Especially the ones who prove they never stopped being Marines." She reached into her flight suit and pulled out a patch, the Phantom Squadron insignia that officially didn't exist. Black background, silver ghost silhouette. The motto we'd lived by, Umbra Fortis, strong in the shadows. "Found this in the archives. Cole was searching. Thought you might want it back." I took the patch, feeling the weight of memories it carried. My squadron, my brothers and sisters in arms who died because someone in authority had made a bad call and refused to admit the mistake. They deserved better than unmarked graves and classified obituaries. "Keep it," I said, pressing it back into her hands. "You earned it today. Pass it on when you find someone else who understands that sometimes saving lives requires breaking the rules meant to preserve order." Naomi's eyes widened. "Captain, I can't." "You can. You did. When you refused to shoot me down, when you trusted instinct over authority, that's what Phantom Squadron was about. Not following orders blindly, but knowing when the mission required more than the manual could teach." She clutched the patch, something fierce and determined crossing her face. "What happens now? To you, I mean." "Now I disappear again. There are still syndicate cells operating in the Pacific, still Marines who need someone watching from the shadows, still missions that don't officially exist. You can't just walk away. Hale will vouch for you. So will I. We can bring you back, get you reinstated." "And spend the next decade fighting bureaucratic battles while Cross and her allies destroy my credibility? No. I work better as a ghost. Less paperwork. More flexibility." A military transport was approaching from the south, probably sent by Hale to extract me for debriefing before Cross could send her own people. I had maybe 10 minutes before authority arrived with all its demands for accountability and control. "Tell Colonel Hale something for me. Tell him I'm sorry I made his job harder, but tell him some promises outlive the careers we sacrificed to keep them. I swore to defend Marines. That oath didn't come with an expiration date. He'll understand. He's different now. We all are." The transport was circling for landing approach. I moved toward my aircraft one more time, running my hand along the fuselage. It had carried me through hell and back, done its job, earned its rest. One more thing, Lieutenant. That move you pulled in the final engagement, the inverted barrel roll into attack position. Where did you learn that? Naomi smiled. From classified training footage I'm not supposed to have seen. Phantom Squadron maneuvers. Your maneuvers, Captain. Then you already knew. Before today. Who I was. What I represented. I suspected. Hoped, maybe. The ghost stories were always my favorite part of flight school. The legends about pilots who flew missions that never officially happened, who saved lives no one could acknowledge. I wanted to be like them. She paused, meeting my eyes directly. I wanted to be like you. Something tight in my chest finally released. Not redemption, not vindication, but continuity. The knowledge that what Phantom Squadron had stood for wouldn't die with the pilots buried in classified graves, that someone would carry it forward, would remember that courage sometimes wore the face of disobedience. Then don't waste it. The Corps needs more pilots like you, people who think, who question, who understand that rules exist to serve Marines, not the other way around. The transport touched down, engines whining as it taxied to a stop. Marines emerged, weapons ready, prepared for resistance. They'd been told to secure a dangerous rogue operative. They had no idea they were looking at someone who died for the Corps once, and would probably do it again. Captain Shaw, the lead Marine called. You're ordered to come with us for debriefing. I looked at Naomi one last time. Semper Fi, Lieutenant. Semper Fi, Ghost. I walked toward the waiting Marines, hands visible, posture calm. They'd take me to some undisclosed location. Cross would interrogate me, threaten me, try to break down my story. She'd fail, because the truth was documented now, witnessed, undeniable. But more importantly, the mission continued, not through me alone, but through every pilot I'd inspired today, every Marine who'd seen that sometimes saving lives required breaking the rules, every officer who'd learned that authority without wisdom was just power without purpose. The story they'd tell in years to come wouldn't match the official reports. They'd whisper about the ghost pilot who appeared during a South China Sea engagement, who disobeyed orders, who saved 200 Marines, who vanished before anyone could properly thank her or condemn her. They'd argue about whether she was hero or traitor, whether she'd earned her legend or stolen it, whether ghosts could truly fly or if the whole thing was elaborate myth. But in the dark corners of ready rooms, in the quiet moments before dangerous missions, young pilots would remember. They'd know that somewhere out there, someone still flew for the Marines who needed protection, more than the officers who demanded obedience. My name is Captain Rhiannon Shaw. Call sign, Rook. Phantom Squadron. I died 12 years ago in the South China Sea. But some promises outlive death. Some missions never end. Some ghosts refuse to rest until every Marine comes home alive. The sky remains uncertain. The threats remain real. But my loyalty remains unshaken. Always faithful, even from the shadows.
Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.